and we're doing it. All right, so as mentioned, in Illustrator, go ahead and set up your artboards at the full size, including the bleed. I would highly recommend, so my width again, 18.5, 18.5, the height, 11.5, hit OK. At this point, just so you're aware of the bleed, I would go ahead and hit Command-R to turn the rulers on. And Command-R is a rulers function for all the Adobe stuff. Isn't that handy? And I would go ahead and drag out guidelines for the 1/4 inch marks on all sides. That way, no matter what, at least you're aware of where's the intended bleed on the artwork. Let's see, oops, 1/4 inch, there we go. And one last one. Yes, I'm totally aware in Illustrator you can have multiple artboards all the same size in the same file. In this scope of a project, because there are 20 different layouts, I would not put all 20 layouts in one file. Because if something, God forbid, should go wrong with that file and it corrupts, you don't want to lose everything. Also, when it comes time to place the artwork in InDesign, it's 100% easier when they're all separate individual files. So you can have spread 1, spread 2, spread 3, bring those in as individual separate files, not as this multi-page Illustrator file. You already have to do that anyway with Photoshop, even though, yes, if you're in Photoshop CC, they have miraculously allowed multiple artboards now, which is just full of danger in my mind because the layer issue is going to be crazy. The reason why they do that, in case you ever want to know, is just for user UX UI designers showing how it translates from an iPad to a smart device to a mobile. That's the only purpose it really has. So you've got that. Yeah, I would always probably recommend as well dropping a line in the middle. I guess it's actually 9 1/8, 9 1/4, my bad. So you got it page divided, and you can totally create all your artwork good to go. So then at that point, and I'm just going to give you a couple beautifully designed examples. Yes, I did these very fast, but I needed multiple spreads pretty quick. What I've created here is, again, my artwork file. Let me drag this out to the side a little bit. Let's just minimize. I've got spread 19, the first spread, and of course my exterior covers a very exciting Night into Day, a demo story. Guaranteed to intrigue children of all ages. Brought to you by the letter D. Thank you. No, don't clap. Just throw money, please. Appreciate that. So I've got these files, and yeah, you can tell, even though I've got the artboards built with the bleed into them, they are set up at that same size, and we can look at it to be sure. It's highlighted my measurements. It is at the 18.5 wide by 11.5 tall. And I've got artwork that's clearly just going way off the edges, and that's okay, it's fine. Again, InDesign is going to trim off all of that, no problem. It's only showing what's on the artboard. So if your photos are getting messy or out to the sides, that is okay. So I've got these different pieces. So what I want to show at this point, okay, close it out. Let's go. Something I would highly recommend, and I'm sorry I can't show this on screen. I know you've already been making a bigger white paper mock-up, so you can kind of sketch in and put notes in and decide the flow of your actual book. I would actually make, and it doesn't even have to be this big, you can go even smaller than this, just a scrapbook, so you can figure out your actual page layout for when it comes time to making what's called a printer file set to take to PaperHog or whoever else you decide to go to. The easiest thing I would say, again, and this is what I mean by saddle stitch, is that the staples literally go into the spine, and you're going to see the staples on the very middlemost spread. No spiral binding, no plastic comb, because that makes a very unstable book for a person to hold and read to kids. Whereas the saddle stitch, because you're on thicker paper at 9 by 18 size, or 11 by 18 size, sorry, that's going to be a lot more stable for them to hold, since we can't really afford to do full-on hardbound copy books. You can do that later if you want through Blurb, and I'll share that info with you guys later if you want, but Saddle stitching is the industry term for this, where they're just simply folding all the pages over a saddle and staples go right into it. Easy device that they've got. It's the cheapest form of binding, actually, so major savings, yay. Long story short, get the 10 sheets of paper together and go ahead and literally label front cover versus back cover. Go ahead and write, scribble however you want. You already know you have to come up with at least 20 files of artwork for the whole book. That will cover 40 pages, that's including the outside. But what I would do is the minute you have this assembled, number the pages. Except I would say one left, one right. Go to the next spread. 2 left, 2 right. Right on every single page. The only spreads that will be in their full continuity in your final setup file will be the outermost spread, which is the cover, and the very middle spread, number 10. That'll be the only one that'll look normal in your final file. Otherwise, you're going to have to assemble and know what's going on with the rest of the book. The reason why I say number these pages really sloppy, because it doesn't matter, is because as soon as you get it all numbered, then go back in, break out your staples, which you can do with an X-Acto blade pretty easy. Pull them out, pop them out. And then at this point, because you've gone through and numbered all the pages, be real cautious when taking it apart. Start from the outside, work your way towards the middle. I'll know on this very first page on my InDesign file, it's going to be back and front cover side by side on the spread. The very next page is going to be 1 left, 19 right. So when you're placing your photo files or your Illustrator files into InDesign, you need to know which half of which artwork sits on which half of that spread. This makes it very easy. As soon as that one's done, put it down on the table. You know your next spread is going to be 19 left, 1 right, side by side. So this is how you start to break down real quickly, just with a rough book of what is my final assembly for printer files. This is what will make it cheap, because if you take it just a single pages to PaperHog, and their machine and equipment has to organize your pages for you, price goes way up. You have to pre-prep this stuff to keep it cheap.
How do you make it so it's front and back? Like, so you can print it on both sides, right?
Yeah, and you'll tell them that. That they do on their machines, no problem. So to do double-sided, they immediately know first spread, second spread are back to back. Third spread, fourth spread, back to back. So the way you organize the file, that's what we're going to do right now. That's all they have to know, and that's why it's real important. The sequence of the layout of the artwork in the file is critical. All they have to do is hit print, telling it back to back.
Is the front cover going to be a thicker, heavier paper than the rest of the book?
I would suggest it, yeah. So a thicker paper for the outside. I think I mentioned to a few, or maybe it was in the email as well. The outside paper, I would recommend no less than 100-pound cover weight. And when you see that in print, when they on their list, you'll typically see it appear like this. And that's literally, instead of hashtag in this instance, it means pound to printers. So, but cover is also the next thing. There's basically 2 types of paper that you're going to work with the most out there. Text weights and cover weights. Text weight is often the cheap stuff that's in printers, but it can be a little higher grade. There's no such thing as all of it's low. Stuff that comes out of printers tends to be around 20 pound. But for your interior on this, so we will say cover, and then we'll just say interior. I would probably target somewhere between 60 to 80 pound. Each printer's supply of papers will be a little different. So if you're not hitting those numbers exactly, don't freak out. They may just not have it, or they may have something that lands in the middle at 70. If you decided you want to do a 100-pound cover for the exterior, actually just so it's less confusing, I'll say that that's exterior versus interior. If you wanted the cover itself, the exterior to be 100 pound, and you wanted all the interior pages to be an 80 pound cover, that's an option too. You know, there's a little wiggle room. They might give you some suggestions when you get there as to what you want. Your biggest concern is that you probably want to pick matte or silk coated paper versus high gloss. High gloss is going to be so shiny, it's going to show fingerprints, and it's going to make all the colors just actually darken a little bit. And you may not want that, especially the more textured papers you're using. If things get too dark, the textures bleed together. So that's an optimum range. If you tilt, I would always tilt a little heavier. If all else fails, if they have both 1680, pick 80. Price difference is not going to be anything. In fact, there probably won't be a price difference in that range. But stuff that comes through a copier is so light and thin, and that is like 20 pound, 22. So that's a pretty significant difference from this weight. It's a nicer paper. It's gonna, and especially with this heavy ink coverage as you guys are gonna have on both sides of the sheet, you want to err a little bit on the side of thicker, because you don't want that ink tinting the other side of the artwork. So, that being said, when we set up our InDesign file, now because it's InDesign, I am setting up official page size. This is the size of a single page, or what the book would look like closed. And we had that measured out at 9 by 11. That is right. You can have right. Yep. Okay. 9 by 11. You do want to leave facing pages checked because it's a book. These pages are going to be facing each other all the way through, so do not uncheck that this time. You can right away go ahead and put in the total number of pages. In this instance, I would type in 41. Because if you've done this before in InDesign, you always know there's that single page that shows up at the top first and then it starts making spreads. Just by nature of the beast, we're not using that first page, but InDesign won't let us automatically set up a spread. So go ahead and put in 41 pages total. If you want, margins in there, that's fine. For this round, I'm just going to type in 0. We could be concerned with bleed here if we wanted to, but to keep it simple, you don't even have to worry about it. So 41 pages. Facing pages, 9 by 11. Hit OK. And now you can see in the Mighty Pages palette, it's already multi-stacked all those spreads. Look at all those great spreads you get to fill with artwork. But there's, like I'm talking about, there's that single page that always shows up first. Truth of the matter is, please leave that first page blank. You will delete it after you export the final PDF, because you're going to export PDF as spreads. But it's InDesign. We're stuck with that first page. If I delete it, all the other pages will just retoggle and still give me a single page. So leave it there for now. The actuality at this point is that this is my first real spread. This is the exterior of the book. And thanks to my handy dandy, really low grade, low res book that I created, I know that my very first spread is the outside cover, front and back. I can simply go to File, Place, search for the mighty artwork that was made, which is the cover. Click Open. At first I can just place wherever. Do you remember a while back when we talked about this little 3x3 widget up in the corner, the reference point item? This is where that tool comes in super handy. This whole thing, this whole layout will become so much easier based on that information. Again, the same usual math stuff. We're dealing with the mighty X and Y grid, two-dimensional grid that InDesign rests in. Those first two measurements that are up in that top portion are, you'll note, X and Y. The numbers they're showing me right now are in reference to whatever dot is selected in that 3x3 grid. And you'll notice I've got the upper leftmost element selected. So the position of this anchor in the corner of this picture, because it's selected, that's the measurement I'm getting. This is created at that full size, including the bleed, so the picture is bigger than the actual page spread. All I have to do to reposition the whole artwork, I don't even have to rescale anything, is hit negative negative 0.25 inches, hit tab, and you see that moved it over off the edge of the page. And then for Y, I do the same thing, negative 0.25 inches. It's now completely centered my artwork on the page. It's got the bleed already in place. I'm done. That's it. Unless I'm adding more stuff here at the InDesign level, which you might be. But for artwork positioning, that's finished. It's Spread one done, boom. Yes, I know sometimes the question comes up, but why does my artwork look so pixelated? Why does it look so crappy? InDesign's default setting is to show work at medium resolution. The reason why is because if you're dealing with a big massive document full of lots and lots of images, and even way bigger than these when you talk about books, it's trying to lessen the processing power on your device. It's making it simple. If you click away from everything on the page you're on and actually right-click into the space, there's a little pop-up menu that gives you display to performance. Typical display is that average setting. If you were working on a big massive catalog, let's say for a fashion company or a seed manufacturing company, whatever, those things have hundreds of thousands of images in them. And if you're just going in to do some text edits, you don't need to sit there and wait for every picture to keep loading up. At that moment, you might work at fast display, in which InDesign just grays out everything that's a photo or placed art. And then all you can see is type blocks that you're working with in InDesign. Vice versa, if I go back to display performance and pick high quality display, yeah, now it's all nice and shiny and clean and perfect. I can look at it in the regular phase, and that's as crisp as it's going to be. But I'm asking more processing power on my computer, so at the moment, I don't really need it to be that fancy. I am okay with just typical display.
Does it save that way for typical display, or does it save high quality automatically?
It's always saving high quality. It's just not visually showing us high quality. So yeah, good question. As long as, and that depends. If something does still print out pixelated, either one, the link is broken for some reason. You may have to just relink it through the linking palette, which usually comes up with the page palette. There's an option that shows links. And right now that cover artwork is the only artwork that's in this file. So that's the only thing on the list. So either the link is broken, or the truth of the matter is the original artwork is too low res. And so then you'd have to go back and fix that in whatever program you used, Photoshop or Illustrator. So okay, cool. I've got that first spread done. I can flip my page over, and now I know I've got 1L and 19R. One being my spread 1. And again, I go to that second spread. And zoom back a little bit so we can see it. File, place. And I've got spread 1, and I just label these files as that so I can keep track of them. This is spread 1 and this is spread 19. And I can actually go ahead and place them both. I hit the shift key and select both files. Hit open. It's going to have me place one of them first, then place the other. Oops, let me turn the view back off. If you actually hit just the W key by itself, it toggles between grid lines and actual preview mode. So you can hit that and toggle. Again, I just need to position them correctly on my XY grid. So I can go ahead and drag a selection across both of them. Up in those XY coordinates, I can tell them both to be negative quarter inch, negative 0.25. Hit the tab key, negative 0.25. Oops. Okay, it doesn't want to do both of them, but at least one of them. One at a time. All right, fair enough. Thanks for correcting me InDesign. I appreciate it. Way to embarrass me. Negative 0.25. Negative 0.25. So at the moment, they're both sitting exactly right on top of each other. I didn't have to do multi-layers. I don't have to worry about that. But I know because of my mock-up that spread 1 is going to be on the left, spread right, and I'm just dragging the actual file, the rectangular box edge, to cover up the other piece. That's all it is. Because I put them both exactly on there, you know when you put artwork into these programs, the artwork is sitting inside an instant mask, in this case the rectangular shape. So both files are actually still sitting here in their entirety, but all I had to do was drag in the middle anchor on one side or the other to make sure I'm seeing which piece of artwork I want to see. Does that make sense? Clear as mud. And that's really, then that's the position. Now I've got that next spread done. I'm showing the left side of spread 1 and the right side of spread 19. So once you get all those artwork files created of all 20 spreads, either in Photoshop or Illustrator or a combination of the two, again, that's up to you, this is how you just bring that artwork in. And then just simply placing both files into a spread and then using the right or left containment device to mask what we don't want to see. I would give you a quick heads up that just because, I'm masking, 19R at this point, I'm not going to go back and click on spread 1 and go and drag its masking piece back. I would really rather leave it as is. One of them should be left as is. There we go. Because I want to make sure there's no chance of any happenstance of a gap where paper color shows through. Because the other real challenge is, again, we're not high-end printing these books. So even when places like PaperHog are telling it to print double-sided, in this case, spread 1 and spread 2 back to back, when their machine does that, it never quite aligns perfectly. It does end up staggering just a tiny little bit. About 1/8 of an inch shift might happen. So they're not, one side is not perfectly in alignment with the other. They always move just a little. So if I can keep bleed artwork going on all sides, even through that middle gutter, I'm going to do it just to help protect everything. So at least there's always color somewhere. Make sense? So it's not that hard. It's just a matter of, okay, now I've got that double-sided. My very next spread does the inverse. Now I have 19 on the left and 1 on the right. Same thing again, place, go back and grab the same instance of those two files. Same thing of putting them at the negative 0.25 bleed position. Negative 0.25, there we go. And in this case, I know 19 needs to be on the left, so because it's the one in the front right now, I'll click on it, grab its right side, scale it back, and now it's the other way around. So now I'll know as this is printing, the very next spreads are going to be back to back. So it's always pairs of pages front and back. That's the simplicity of the file that has to be set up for them to instantly hit print and tell it to print double-sided. It'll just keep doing pairs of pages in that sequence. So that's why this little handy-dandy rough cut assembly is a good quick reminder of how do I need to do final assembly. I will say this is your final PDF file for the printer. This is not the final PDF file I want. I want you to leave it in full sequence. So that way when I look at the PDF, I see the spreads in their sequential order as is. So you may want to make that file first where you can just go through and again, or you might make a new file. That's totally up to you. But I'll see cover and exterior in its entirety. I'll see spread 1 in its entirety. Spread 3, spread 4. They're left in just normal, natural sequence. The final PDF you submit onto the art server will be that one, not this. Make sense? So, okay, you got the final artwork selected and all done. Everything's assembled. Final export. This is the key I'm talking about. You can go to File, go to Export, decide where you want to save it. I'm just going to throw it on the desktop. I guess it would be good to actually save the file first. Big gnarly book. And yeah, I'll save it on the desktop. That's fine. Okay, so now I'll go Export. Command D for those who want the quick key. It's still a print device. I'm not changing that at all. Hit Save. And the next pop-up window. This window arrangement might change a little bit depending on if you're in CS6 or 5, but all the same information is there. You may just have to search around inside the window, but it's still two pop-up windows in a row. And that second one, if you want to, by the default menu, you could leave everything as high-quality print. That's fine. That could be an easy, quick way to do it. If you want to make absolute sure, you can always go for smallest size first, but then under compression, all those same things we talked about of switching everything to do not downsample, no compression, do not downsample, no compression, do not downsample, none. This is guaranteeing that whatever the final resolution you made all the artwork at, which should be high res, it's coming out that same way. It's going to make a huge PDF. This is not going to be a small PDF when you're done with it, when you're exporting the final one. So be prepared. Like I showed you that one time, you'll have to notice it on this one because it'll go pretty quick because I've only got 3 little pieces of artwork. But in that little zone up here in the top bar, you will see that little vertical processing meter going through. As long as that thing is still running, don't try to close the InDesign file because that's where I've had students before get errors that they're like, oh, it's exporting, it's probably done, they close it, and it didn't finish the export because it got cut off. So if you're seeing, and keep an eye on that spot when I hit the export button here, that's where that little processing element happens. So, good thing we're not quite cut off at the top of the screen there, but it's in that zone in this void space right there. Other last setting to take care of, we didn't want the image compressed, that's great, but you absolutely have to now include the crop marks and the bleed. Don't click on all printers marks, just simply click on crop marks. That's the only one you need. For the bleed settings, we already know what those are going to be. It's 1/4 inch, 0.25, definitely not negative 0.25 at this point. But if everything's still linked like it's supposed to be in that zone, the minute you type it in one and hit tab, it'll apply to all 4 sides. So make sure the link is still connected and that 0.25 reads on all 4 sides. Last but certainly not least, back in the general area, there's an option to export spreads instead of pages. That's the key one as well. So you're hitting 3 different areas. You're making sure, number 1, spreads is selected. Number 2, everything's not compressed, or if you want to stick to that, high quality, that should be fine. But I sometimes like to just make absolute sure that InDesign doesn't do anything crazy. And then 3rd, under marks and bleed, that crop marks is selected and that your bleed setting is at 1/4 inch. Now we're done. So as soon as I go ahead and hit the export key, keep an eye on that zone, you'll probably see a little processing bar for a moment. Yeah, it was really quick. You almost didn't catch it, but you guys are going to see literally that bar spin for a little bit when you get your final artwork. So now at this point, I can close it. Hopefully you find it somewhere. There it is. So right, here's my big gnarly PDF file. Yes, it exports spreads, but there's still that single page that would have been driving us nuts. So at this point, I just need to make sure under Tools, I can select that page, hit the little trash can. It says, are you sure you want to delete this page? And I said, oh yeah, get rid of it. And now I have all my 20 spreads as is. So when places like PaperHog print, you're going to say, this is a 20-page file. Pages are back to back. Page 1 and 2, front and back. 3 and 4, back and back. 5 and 6. And that's what they'll take care of. Yes, do plan on, because of the scale of these books, that no printer is going to turn it around in an hour for you. It's probably going to be a full 24-hour period. So plan that in your schedules accordingly. It's not going to take them long to do it, but they're not going to do it in a single business day. They're going to want the 24-hour turnaround. So plan on that. Any questions? So it's not super complex for final assembly. It's just for the basic artwork, that's going to be the easiest way to assemble and keep track of where do your pages land with just little quick paper mock-ups like that. All right, savvy? And I think that's it. Yeah. So we got those, and then you can see on those pages up close, there's the crop marks on each side, and there's plenty of bleed artwork on everything, so when they're doing final trim down for you, shouldn't have any problem.
So do you recommend adding the text in Illustrator or in InDesign?
That is completely up to you. I mean, there's some, depending on the types of techniques or treatments you're doing based on your concept or narrative, you might do some of it in Photoshop if you're working in Photoshop primarily. You might do some of it in Illustrator. Some of the same things you can do in Illustrator, you can also do in InDesign, so it's kind of designer's choice at that level. It's up to you guys. The main thing is that if you really are playing at some point with maybe type on a path or some sort of curve, Illustrator does tend to handle it better, but InDesign will do that if you use the pen tool and give it a chance. But sometimes I've noticed errors that happen in InDesign because, again, it's Adobe trying to blur some of the lines and efficiency between programs. But then there's still techniques in Illustrator where you can convert all the text to outlines and start to play with scale and position all day long. And that's much, much, much easier to do in Illustrator than InDesign. Because InDesign, every time you work with type, it requires a type block to start with, to start typing. Whereas in Illustrator, you don't have to make a type block at all. You can actually make a file, click the type tool, click the type tool. There we go. Click once and start typing, and it's its own set of letter forms that you can then kind of scale and play with. And again, Command-Shift-O to convert to outlines. Ungroup everything because it likes to group all the stuff, and then start playing with letters all over the place. So much faster. In InDesign, I'd have to make a separate type block for every single letter, and there are certain strengths and weaknesses each program has, and that would be one of them. Illustrator is designed for this. InDesign is designed as a kind of a content management program to assemble final stuff. All right.
You
Question.
want the first page right on the back of the cover, right? Like,
That's up to you guys. If you want to have a little, what's often called in pages in hardbound books, you can do that. The main thing, page count quantity wise, is it has to be divisible by 4. So if you add a set of in pages on each end of the book, that's already the 4. So you're fine. I would just at that point then make 45 pages in InDesign
As
instead
long
of
as
41.
The spread, the correct amount of spreads.
Yeah, because it's one of those where I know some, and that's a real technique that's used in children's books where it's kind of that transitionary period of you've opened the cover, you're moving from your world into our world, and sometimes it's just artwork or pattern to kind of set up a tone, and then we go to title page. Some do that very well, some it's not designed to be quite that way, but a lot of the more traditional children's books, yeah, would use those in pages. But totally up to you. All right, cool, so I'll stop this recording. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.